Hello and welcome back to Aunt Lainey's Kitchen. Next up, I'm going to talk to you about recipes that I have in progress. There's a few of these that are in progress. And again, some of these are things I've made before in some kind of iteration. Like for example, the Asiago ciabatta bun breadsticks. Basically what it is, it's an Asiago ciabatta bun that's been cut into strips and I put it in my panini maker just to kind of give it like a little bit of the crisp and so the first thing I do is I put the bun the two pieces of bread whole on the panini maker after I have sprayed it a little bit with some cooking spray. Sometimes I put down just a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, just a little bit on there, and then I might throw on a little basil onto the plates. And then, again, I keep it kind of like light because I know that I'm going to kind of like slice it down. Now, before I did try to, slice the bun first and then put it on the panini maker. But when I did that, it got weird. The texture got kind of weird, and in the sense that I think that it was just a little too much heat for that small piece of bread. So now I just kind of put things on a whole, and then I put it on the panini maker, and then I do lightly season it, but I really save that seasoning for the pizza sauce. And so if I'm doing it on the fly, I just have the pizza sauce, and I'll throw a little bit of the dried Parmesan in there, a little bit of like Italian seasonings, maybe like a little bit of garlic oil, or like some grated garlic, throw that in there to kind of get it like give it like a nice kick. But if I've got a little bit more time, what I like to do is I'll saute some actual vegetables, and that I'll put in like maybe some shallots, garlic. I've done mushrooms before. I will put them in a cast iron skillet, and I'll saute them for like 15 20 minutes, that kind of thing. Let them cool, and then I'll put them in the pizza sauce, and it's really great for like dipping with with the sliced strips. Now, I've also done this kind of like a breadstick situation. I've done it with focaccia bread, where I've taken like the hunk of focaccia bread, cut it, sliced it, and then put both pieces onto the plate. Again, like lightly seasoned, all that stuff. And that's a really thick. That's a nice kind of like a thicker kind of breadstick situation. And then again, the other option is to put them, in the oven and do it that way, and then oven bake everything, and then bring them out and let them cool a little bit, and then chop them into the strips. But I just for because it's still kind of warm here in the Midwest, I'm trying not to use my oven a lot. I have been baking some cakes and stuff like that, but I'm trying not to use it for anything else because it just gets too hot. So there's that. That's something that will, depending on how many, if you just, if if you use the two slices, then you could probably, I cut them up into eighths. But if there were just two people, you could probably kind of cut them up into fourths, like each kind of square. It would be like four strips of like a breadsticks kind of thing. So again, it just kind of depends on what mood strikes me. Because sometimes what I want to do is I don't necessarily want to dip with the whole kind like as a dipping thing. I want to cut them into eighths and then take a fork and dip it into the sauce that way. It just really depends on how savory I am feeling. Next up, spice cake bite updates. So for the October birthdays in my life, I baked up treats and I placed them in a brown paper sack. And those treats were vanilla allspice cake bites. So I used a spice cake mix because I haven't really made a cake from scratch for a few years now. I did a lot of that, pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, and then I was like, I just don't want to do that. It just got to be too time consuming for me. So from the spice cake mix, I added a half a cup of vegetable oil instead of the third cup that was listed on the box. I also mixed in a tablespoon of vanilla extract and a teaspoon of allspice into the batter. And, so I was whipping it up, all that stuff. And when it comes to like cakes like that, like doing that, I don't like to frost them because I think that the vanilla and the allspice is giving it, just to like all of the flavor. So I don't want to overdo it. So I did get some rave reviews on that. Now, again, I had three, like each, because there were so many October birthdays. Each of the bags had 3 bites, and then I also slipped in some microwave popcorn because I had a lot of extra. So I thought, that's like kind of like a nice little, treat that you can eat later. But I left the gathering a little bit on the early side, and I just, I went to sleep, and I woke up to lots of people praising those the spice cake bites. And then when I went to watch the Chiefs with my friends, I also got some great compliments on the spice cake bite, and somebody asked me for the recipe, and I was explaining to her, hey, I used a spice cake mix and I did these special things. So I've been trying to get into the better habit of writing things down. And so I feel like, on my blog and everything, I have started posting the recipes in progress. I've been doing it for a little bit, and that way, like it's a kind of a reminder to me. So like, okay, you got to expand this. But at the very least, if I don't expand it, people can figure out, okay, this is what, she is doing. Like it's not anything secret, anything like that. I just believe that vanilla and allspice, that's fall for me. So as much as I can use that, I'm going to use that. Now, I also did like like a smaller bundt cake, a spice cake, because I from the same kind of batter. Wait, no, I used a different batter for this, but I made a spice cake, and it was like a smaller bundt cake, and then I put applesauce. Where the bundt, there's like, like on a bundt cake, there's kind of like the top. You can fill it with something. I used applesauce, and then I had like allspice in the applesauce, and it was delicious. It was so good. It tasted like autumn luxury, and I was, spending like my mornings. And then one afternoon, I was just kind of taking a triangle, each day. I think I was able to kind of make it last for 5 days. And I would sip it with, a nice black tea. Although if I were, more of a coffee drinker, I think it'd be really good with like a little bit of like vanilla creamer. That might be really, really good. But yeah, so that is my spice cake, I should say, bite update. And so, I'm kind of looking towards the holiday season since I'm going to be leaning more towards baking up treats versus, buying a whole bunch of presents or whatever. So I'm kind of looking at that, and I'm looking at a dark fudge, maybe like cranberry situation. I got to figure out how I want to do it. Like right now, I've got a raspberry cake that I made, and a dark fudge raspberry cake that I made from a mix. And so I'm gonna try that out and kind of see, maybe I want to do that with like some little mini, like the little tiny micro. They're not even mini, they're micro bundt cakes. Kind of try that. Next up, my next recipe in progress. I do always talk about the egg white frittata, but this time I feel like I outdid myself. I had an egg white frittata. It had mushrooms, tomatoes, shallots, cilantro seasoning, and I served it with waffle fries and a waffle that I topped with all like whipped cream, and then I topped allspice onto the whipped cream. It was so good. It was so good. And it was one of those kind of breakfasts where, I mean, I've been trying to eat slower, just from like a health perspective, because I just want to, sometimes when I really like something, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So I get really excited and stuff like that. And but I was, working on kind of taking the smaller bites and all that, and it was just so delicious. It felt decadent, and it's like a nice little decadent breakfast that I had. My next kind of recipe in progress, it was kind of a lunch. Now, I've done turkey and bacon paninis before, and again, I've got the panini maker, but I used some of the Asiago ciabatta bread from before, like the first kind of recipe I talked about, the Asiago ciabatta breadsticks. So I used kind of like the buns for this. I had some, turkey from the deli. I had some bacon that I had baked, so it was fresh bacon that I baked. I just seasoned it with like a little black pepper, just nothing too big or anything like that. And I added shredded mozzarella cheese and smoked paprika. to the sandwich. And then I had waffle fries on the side. I really do appreciate waffle fries. I appreciate how versatile they are. Like waffle fries for breakfast, waffle fries for lunch, dinner. You can, like, I feel like waffle fries, you can do it all. There's so many different options with waffle fries. Now, another update that I have as far as recipes in progress is I have, new baking pans. I did mention the newer kind of like smaller bundt pan. Then I've got two mini loaf pans. They're 5.74 inches. Because I've got a bigger loaf pan and I've, made people cakes and that. But I thought, I kind of want a smaller loaf pan because first of all you can make more like it's it's easier to bake in those, but also it's a nice little treat. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could bake up little loaves of cake for people for birthdays and all that stuff, and also not just birthdays but for the holiday season. It could be something that I do, just like a little kind of a treat, an Aunt Laney treat. And then I also got a 6-inch spring form pan, which I'm excited about as well. I'm trying because I have smaller little pans. I'm like, maybe I could make myself my own little stacking kind of cake. We'll see, because I have to get better at fondant, I think, before I really try to do that. But then I thought, there's more than one way to do that. I think a lot of times what happens to me is I get something in my head when it comes to food and other things, and I don't want to deviate from that because no, that is the vision, that is the vision, and I get overly committed to a certain vision. But I thought, I could do that 6-inch cake, and then I have like, I have smaller like cake pans, whatever. And instead of worrying about tying it with frosting, maybe it's something where I'm just throwing up like, throwing a little sugar on there, some powdered sugar on there, and maybe like, decorating with like, some fruit or something like that. I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? Or I could just do like a nice little glaze on there and not get so caught up in it's got to look this way. It's got to look this way. Because for me, when I do that, it really does take the joy out of food for me. Okay, when we come back, I'm going to be reviewing some restaurants that I went to recently.